One Jets Drive, Flight 23 Ascension, Aaron Rodgers. We get into all of it today, right now. Let's go. Zoinks. It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans. Field Yates, baby. Field Gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show. Come on, people. Connor Rodgers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor Gosh darn Sycamore, baby. For me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever done.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas. Hey everybody, my name is Paul Esden Jr., aka Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com, and we got a spectacular program for you guys today. We have brought in the architect, the man that runs the place. His name is Seth Bradley. He's the director of One Jets Drive, and he graces us with his presence right here, right now, because we have a lot of pressing questions to get into, and let's bring him in here on the program. Seth Bradley, what's up, brother?
What's up, man? That was some intro, I got to tell you.
Well, I have to say, Seth, it's unique because obviously a couple of months ago we did the Jets Twitter Diehards. We'll get a little bit into that. You were asking me the questions. Now I'm turning it around. I become the interrogator, and I'm going to be asking you the questions, Mr. Seth Bradley. So I hope you're ready.
I don't know if I'm ready, man. I'm honored to be on, to be honest with you, man. Total celebrity, total fan of yours.
Well, it's about damn time. It's long overdue. But my people, your people, we're able to figure and hammer this thing out, so it's beautiful. So let's get right into it. Your latest baby, it's out there, and I wanted to make sure when we had our first conversation, Seth, on the show, is that we were able to get it after Flight 23 Ascension went out there. So first off, the origin story, which obviously a big piece of the puzzle, obviously on 2 of the 3 episodes, but in general, was the acquisition of Aaron Rodgers. When did Flight 23 Ascension become a thing for you guys? What was kind of the origin story? And then, of course, actually going through the whole process of putting that 3-episode series together.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, for the past 2 years now, we've done, the flight series going back to 2021 when Robert Saleh was hired. And, I think fans really kind of saw this take another level last year with the NFL draft and Joe Douglas acquiring 3 first-round picks and then Breece Hall, and it really kind of built up to, 23. I think, Coach Saleh and Joe Douglas have steadily been building this thing, and I think, 2023 was always kind of this year that they looked to say, like, hey, like, we're going to be all in. So I think, when the offseason hit and you realize, the Jets are going to go after a veteran quarterback, and you hear that from Robert Saleh, Joe Douglas, Woody Johnson, I think the wheels started turning like, hey, like this is going to be it. The quarterback is going to be our number one storyline, for this offseason, for the series. Takes a much different tone than years past when the draft was always kind of the forefront, because Joe has always built this thing through the draft. But this was, really kind of that final chess piece, in terms of building this team into a championship contender. So, I think as the offseason kind of hit and you start to hear the rumors like, hey, like Rodgers might be a legitimate option. And then, the Pat McAfee interview happens and, the Jets are flying out to California to meet with Aaron Rodgers. I think it just sort of kind of became this thing where it was like, hey, like this, Aaron Rodgers is going to be the storyline. He's going to be it. So we knew that first episode was going to have to be heavily focused on him. And obviously it's not really just a, historical move for the Jets and a historical move for the NFL. I mean, I think in the history of sports, you're talking about maybe a handful of things that have happened that have ever matched the magnitude of, the Aaron Rodgers trade.
And we will get into more of that Aaron Rodgers trade in terms of your guys' angle in it, doing some of those interviews that were featured in Flight 23 Ascension. But I'm curious, Rich Eisen, diehard Jet fan, big fan, of course, myself. How could you not be of Rich Eisen, even going back to the Sports Center days to even what he does now? Was he always the choice when you guys are saying, okay, who's going to narrate this? Of course, it's got to be Rich Eisen. Was he among several names you guys were considering? What went into that process?
So last year when we got Rich for the 2022 version, I think we threw out, a couple names internally that we thought could potentially, provide a celebrity narration for the series because of, this series is kind of, obviously One Jets Drive is kind of our mothership show, but with Flight, it provides a little something different for fans. You get a unique look, into meetings and things like that. So we wanted to do something a little bit different. I think Rich was always kind of our number one target. I think, it was kind of a pie in the sky at first, kind of saying like, hey, like, do you want to come on and be the voice of this series? It takes a lot of trust on his part. You kind of have to, he obviously had to see what 2021 was and that, what that series was to kind of trust us like, hey, like I'm going to be the voice of this. But Rich was all in from the beginning. He's been tremendous to work with. And, I think when he went on a podcast with Eric Allen back during the Super Bowl week in Arizona, and he kind of, Eric asked him about it, and he said, like, we'll run it back, Flight 23. And I think, we kind of said to ourselves, like, all right, like, let's go get Rich again. So he was all in on it. He's been great. And obviously, you want somebody that can provide this celebrity stature, but also is a diehard Jets fan. There's a couple moments throughout the series where we're able to write it through his voice and kind of, bring to light, what it's like to be a diehard Jets fan, watching this team from his seat. So I think that's kind of the really cool part about, bringing Rich into the show.
And I'm glad you guys made that choice because, again, you could have gotten probably any big-time random celebrity that may not have necessarily had a direct tie to the Jets, but certainly may have brought that gravitas to the show. So I love that you guys considered that factoid, but also something that could be home. And, again, one of the – and you've talked about it before. I think it was near the end of the first episode where Rich had this beautiful monologue where he kind of got to the Weeb Eubank and really go back and go, whoa, okay, this isn't just some random guy that's narrating this thing. This is something that could come home and all Jet fans can kind of like, it's almost like a silent nod. We're on the streets and we look at each other. It's like a, yo, what's up? There was a little bit of that I felt like in the series with that moment in particular, but kind of in general between Jet fans and the Rich Eisen narration throughout.
Yeah, it's like I think with, the end of episode 1 was we kind of wrote that for Rich, no one else really could have brought that home like him, and I think we were kind of putting that, the blueprint of that episode together. We said, like, there's got to be a moment where we connect the fans to what this moment is, in the history of the team, because I think really outside of, Super Bowl III, there's few moments can match the magnitude of what this offseason was and what acquiring Aaron Rodgers was.
Hey, random question. It wasn't even on my sheet, but it was something, I've tried to grab a couple of clips. It's kind of my shtick, throw it out for the Twitter universe. What went into the flight archive? Because those things were so cool. Like a transitional video sometimes between segments, and I just tweeted out, I think the last one today, that we had Jericho Cotchery, my favorite Jet of all time, little LaDainian Tomlinson love. I mean, these were sprinkled and splashed in. What was the thought process there? What went through it? Because I think they were really cool.
Yeah, I think we were trying to, kind of create some additional segments that we thought could tie in the history to the current team, and I think, when we were conceptualizing some different ideas, and obviously we were proud to have Audi on as a sponsor of this series this year, we really wanted to kind of, bring back this historical piece because I think there's so many moments that Jets fans kind of connect to with, whether it's 4 first-round picks in 2000, trading up for Darrelle Revis, like you said, drafting Jericho Cotchery. It was just kind of like a cool way to break up the show and give fans a piece of, historical moves that have happened in the past that, I think fans would connect to.
Seth, were there moments, there's been a couple that have gone viral on social media. I think the biggest one is the one you guys teased as soon as the episode dropped. It must have been episode 2. That was the draft episode where you went like Joe Douglas predicted the trade and you're like in the room and then you hear him predict it. And then the other part of it was kind of talking about their draft board and that sort of thing. So like when you were in the moment, I know you guys have a wonderful team, so it's more than just you. There's others in it. But like, is there moments like you're like, oh, that's going on Flight 23 Ascension. Oh, there you go. Like, that's a sexy, we know that's going to blow up. That's spicy. That's juicy. Like, in the moment, do you guys realize that? Or is it not until after the fact you're going through hundreds of hours of footage where you start picking and choosing things from that perspective that end up kind of catching your eye?
Yeah, it's like I think in the moment you're so locked in on what you're shooting, you might not necessarily process, how big a moment can actually be. Like, I think with Joe predicting that the Steelers are going to trade above us, I think in the moment you're like, wow, like it's honestly pretty crazy that happened. And, as kind of the reports came out about, Broderick Jones and the Jets' interest throughout the offseason, we're kind of sitting on that one thinking like, man, like I can't wait for this to get out so we can just, kill that narrative. Because, I think that's one of the things that is so cool about the draft is not only is Joe locked in on what we're going to do, but he knows what every other team is going to do around the league. And his staff is incredible. And, there's so much prep work that goes into it. So it was really kind of cool to, show that moment. But I think there's definitely moments throughout the show when you're filming that you're like, man, like that's going to be a moment that catches on with the fans. Like, our incredible producer, Will Hahn, in one of the very first scenes with Aaron Rodgers, goes to mic him up and Aaron's like, nah, like I'm not cool with that. And we're all like laughing there. But that was such a cool moment for our crew because it really kind of showed like how cool Aaron Rodgers actually is. And he's this larger than life personality, but we're sitting down to do the first interview with him and you kind of have that moment like, man, like this is really Aaron Rodgers. This is really happening. And it was every bit as authentic as it looked, in the show. So that was kind of a moment that we were like, that's got to be in because we thought it was important to show, what Aaron is actually like. I don't think anybody's really like seen that side of him,
Right.
in 18, 19 years in the NFL. So I think there are definitely moments that you're watching. You're like, that's going to be a moment that, we tease. It's going to go viral.
Seth, I just have to say this. On behalf of Jet fans across the universe, thank you guys for killing that narrative because I'm seeing all these people going, oh, man, they got Jip for, Broderick Jones. Oh, the Jets have no idea what they're doing. All these tweets. We're collecting receipts thanks to Robert Saleh. So we're gathering them up. And when I saw that, I'm like, ooh, grab the receipts, rally the troops. Let's go. It's time to give the business to some of these people that said the Jets are getting dunked on. So I just have to say, Jet fans have been, texting, tweeting, and sending all this stuff to me that I had to make sure I sent you a personal, direct, mano-y-mano thank you for making sure you guys got that up because that was chef's kiss. Delicious. I just have to say, Seth.
Yeah, it's like the narrative that Joe was caught off guard by anything is surprising because, I think when you see him during the draft, that's his element. Like he's as locked in and as cool as you'll ever see anybody. Like I think it's one of those things where when you're watching it, through our lens and things like that, you're like, I'll never forget, when he was trading up for Jermaine last year and, we were seeing him work the phones throughout, the first round of that draft. And you're just sitting there, you're just captivated by it, and everything's kind of happening around him. And I remember him saying to somebody in the building, like, I didn't even really remember that was even happening, to be honest with you, or like that happened that way. And it was so cool that we were able to kind of document that. But you realize how locked in he is in that moment, and it's just like the draft is just a whole other beast to him, and he's so well prepared. And so like that narrative that he was caught off guard by anything was pretty surprising to me.
All right, let me go to another one. This one's juicy. Were there moments during the show that like happened? Because again, you guys are recording a lot, and you have to cut it down, obviously, and edit it down to select amounts of episodes. Were there things that you're like, oh, that's so sexy, that's so juicy, but of course we cannot put that in the show? Were there a couple of those moments?
There's always stuff like that. It's I think when you're documenting, a team for months and months, and we started this production really in January, February is when we really kind of like, okay, like we're going to start shooting and everything. And you start to see the narratives develop and you don't know really which way everything's going to go. Like we're kind of covering the team through, everything you kind of hear like, okay, like Derek Carr's in the building, the Jets are flying out to see, Aaron Rodgers, we're kind of, that's all happening for us in real time too. So I think we kind of go with the flows of like everything that's actually happening. But I think, you definitely, there are moments you're like, man, like I wish fans could see this part or I wish fans could see that. But it's obviously the nature of we're documenting for months, So, but there are even things that like hit the cutting room floor because, it's the show's long enough already. There's just great moments that, you kind of wish like, okay, like, there was a moment, with Nathaniel Hackett where he's talking about the development of Alan Lazard and his time with him in Jacksonville and seeing him in Green Bay. And it didn't make the show, but it was kind of cool to see his thoughts on, Allen's progression in the NFL. So there's different things like that happen. You're just like, man, like, I think like that'd be great for fans to see, but obviously it hits a cutting room floor.
Let me ask you, Seth, can you tease us, is there a future Flight 23 After Dark, some sort of paid subscription program where we can get some of the stuff that never made it on the show? Could that be in the future?
I don't know. It's like maybe we'll release some extras, some bonus scenes or something like that. I think, there's obviously just so much that can come out of a show like that. And, we're fortunate to, be in all the draft meetings. We're fortunate to, honestly, the one thing I'll say about the show is like, anybody that follows our, productions, you might see something from the draft meetings or something down the road. I think Jermaine Johnson last year is a prime example. We were in the meeting when Aaron Whitecotton and Coach Sala are talking about how they need somebody who can chase down Josh Allen. Like that was a big focal point to them in drafting an edge rusher last year. And, he has the huge sack against the Bills in the upset win at MetLife. And, we immediately say like, all right, we have something here. Let's call back to, when they said like, we need somebody that can go get Josh Allen. It's kind of the benefit of documenting the team. I think all of our productions kind of cross over in a certain way. So you might see something that you didn't see in Flight 23 and One Jets Drive. There's guys that might be UDFAs, or there's guys that we might have picked in the later rounds of like, hey, like we might release something, down the road that can help tell a story. So that's just the nature of documenting a team throughout the whole season.
Again, we're speaking with Seth "Gosh Bradley" here on the program, everybody. The New York Jets director for One Jets Drive Films. Make sure you guys like the video. Hit subscribe down below for more awesome New York Jets content. Let me ask you that, Seth. As you guys are going through this entire process, are you the final line of defense? Who, or if not you, who is the person that kind of does maybe a final look over each episode to say, oh, well, that's great, but that can't be included? Is it, I wouldn't imagine, be like Woody Johnson or something. Like, who is the guy that like makes sure, gives it one last run through or one last check to make sure certain things can't or certain things can? Who kind of like filters that out?
Yeah, we have a great PR team with Eric Gelfand leads the charge. He's our senior vice president. And then Jared Winley, who's also an executive producer for Flight and One Jets Drive. Both those guys really do a great job. And they have the total trust of, the football side of the building to make the, the judgment calls on, hey, like, I've been here long enough that I kind of have a sense of like, hey, this might fly, this might not fly. But at the end of the day, like, sometimes I want them to make the call on that, and they do a great job of that. So, I think at the end of the day, we just want a product that, Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, the coaching staff, the players, everyone's going to be super proud of. We're never looking to put anybody in jeopardy or, by breaching the trust of, the football side of the building. So, and I think we've done a great job of that the last couple of years is really bridging that trust to go into a draft meeting and, you have multiple cameras in there. It's like I say to everybody, like I don't think I would want somebody filming me doing my job. So like, when you think of like coaches and scouts and things like that, openly talking about players, and there's a lot of stuff that we can't show, it's, guys that we're not going to pick and things like that. And they have total trust in us. And, that's kind of a cool part of the process.
All right, let me ask you about the Aaron Rodgers thing because it's fascinating. And you've led it throughout this show that we've done so far, saying that, like, man, not only is this like a massive trade for the Jets, a massive trade for the NFL landscape, but like in sports in general. So with that being said, you have all of that in your brain, and then, oh yeah, Aaron Rodgers comes in, you guys are interviewing him for that opening bit that ended up also being the trailer to tease the entire Flight 23 Ascension, where Will Hahn's trying to, go put a mic on him, and there's like a little bit of that. Like, is there like in your head almost like, I don't even know what the right emotion is, but like trepidation, like, oh my God, that's Aaron Rodgers right there. That's not Joe Blow. That's not Paul Esden. That's Aaron frickin' Rodgers. Was there a little bit of that? And then was the Will Hahn moment the thing that just kind of broke everything? Like, how real did it feel? Because like Aaron Rodgers to like me or any random Jet fan is almost like a demigod. It's hard to even picture him as a normal person sitting there like any of us.
Yeah, it almost smashed when Boy Green came in for the Jets Twitter diehards. I won't lie to you, man.
Thank you very much.
That was right up there for me. But no, it's like for real. I think for our crew, that was such a special day. The day, Aaron, you felt it even the day before. In the building, that Aaron was coming, and you see them prepping the jersey, and there's so many different parts of that process that, I'll tell my kids about. I'll tell my grandkids about. It's a very special moment. Not just for the organization, but for our crew. It's like I think everybody will remember that. I think there's moments like throughout the process that you're just like, it's almost surreal that you're sitting there, you're right next to Aaron Rodgers. it was cool. Like he introduced himself to every single person on our crew, everybody that was helping, learned their name. And I think, I just think when somebody like that comes in the building that's, a superstar, you never know what to expect. Somebody could, obviously like be totally different. And I think for us, it was such a day that we'll all remember because of how cool Aaron Rodgers was and how nice he was. And you just felt it, talking to him, like, you're like, this guy wants to be a Jet. He wasn't forced to come here. He's all in. He's going to be the guy that hopefully leads the Jets to a championship. So I think that part of it is something I'll never forget. And I know our crew won't either.
All right, let's get into just a quick detour on the Jets Twitter diehards. How did you guys pick the list? Okay, so Boy Green, that's cool, and NYJ Mike and Matt and all those guys. And there was a huge cast of people you ended up picking. How did you guys figure out the selection process? Was there this draft room meeting? You're like, well, obviously Boy Green's number one on our big board here. Who else are we moving and sliding around? Like, how did you guys come up with the list of people that ended up being on the documentary?
Yeah, it's like I think there's natural that, there were fans that were disappointed that they weren't invited or, weren't in it. There were actually fans that couldn't make the shoot. We kind of had to do the shoot over the course of a 2-day period to bring everybody into the facility. And, some just naturally were either, in other parts of the country or, too far away or couldn't make it work with their schedule or things like that. So there were others that were, could easily have been a part of it just the same way you were. But, I think when we kind of went through it, I think the biggest thing is we wanted to be entertaining. I think,
Right.
It's one thing like not everybody can carry a documentary. I certainly can. Like no one wants to watch me for, 30 minutes talk about, the Jets and things like that. So we really kind of went through and, picked people that we thought would be, highly entertaining for fans to watch. And, I think, there's guys like Drew from Jersey that, ended up, not being able to be a part of it, that we were like, we obviously wanted him to be a part of it. So maybe there's a sequel coming, I don't know, like maybe we'll do a sequel, there's a bunch of people that could warrant being involved in that. I think the cool thing with the, the Jets Twitter diehards was that was kind of at the brink of the Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, I remember talking to you guys about like, who do you want? And, there was a lot of debate. Some people wanted Carr, some people wanted Rodgers. Everyone was kind of a little bit scared to say like, oh, are we going to go all in on Aaron Rodgers? And it's kind of cool to look back on that now and say like, it did go through, the Jets, made a historical trade. But I think like, that was the whole point of that documentary, was to capitalize on the excitement of the Jets going after, a veteran quarterback and what that pursuit would be like through the eyes of, what I think is the best fan base on the planet, the Jets Nation. So, I think that project was one of the more unique ones we've ever done. And it was just kind of cool to connect with the fans on that level.
I could do nothing but laugh now, because at the end of it, I remember talking to all the people behind the scenes, and I'm like, man, hopefully you guys turn this quick. I'd hate for you to not be able to have it ready by the time the Jets pick their quarterback. And then the SpongeBob thing several months later, as we're on the edge of our seat, and that ultimately is we end up getting Aaron Rodgers on my birthday officially, April 26th. So it ended up being a little bit late, but again, all good things come to those who wait, I suppose. So, ultimately, I guess it all worked out. What is going back to Flight 23 real quick, Seth, what's the next step here? What's the next big documentary you guys have dropping this summer?
Well, it's like, I think One Jets Drive is something all the fans relate to. That's our signature series. I think there's, some fans don't even realize we document the team from training camp through the season. I think the training camp episodes have kind of become this, one that everybody gravitates towards because there's so much, positivity and so much excitement towards the season. We release those every single week, but, during the season, I think the show kind of shifts to more of an all or nothing style, or like a Hard Knocks in season where, we're documenting the team through the ups and downs of the season. So, we've been fortunate to have that series, for the last, this will be the 6th season of it, which is awesome because, it's survived, multiple coaching changes. It's survived, the brand has kind of become this synonymous, very synonymous with Jets fans. Everyone talks about 1JD. That's how we developed 1JD Films. So essentially, with One Jets Drive, we wanted to kind of create more of a 30 for 30 style brand, and that was why we created 1JD Films. So we had the opportunity to do Flight 23. We had the opportunity to do the diehards and some of these other bigger productions. So we have a great documentary coming out on Breece Hall that I think everybody will be excited about. We've been documenting his rehab for a long time. So we've had cameras with him in the training room, and we're going to kind of tell his story through this, his road back, which I think is really something I'm very excited about, because I think fans are going to get to see stuff that they don't normally see, and that's a credit to our training staff and Breece himself. Breece is one of the best players to work with. He put his trust in us to kind of do this, and I think obviously fans are really excited about him coming back, as are we. I think him being hurt last year was devastating to everybody, including our production team. It was hard to see him go down like that after playing so well. So I think I just think fans are going to really gravitate towards that one. And then I also think we have a couple documentaries coming out around the Hall of Fame as well for Joe Klecko and Darrelle Revis. So there's a lot of stuff on the horizon. It's going to be an exciting season, and the diehards will continue as well. We're going to continue to tell great stories of fans.
And the Jet fans, we're spoiled in the nature. We have so many great fans, and you guys are going to do a great job of, with those blank canvases and painting those stories. You said the magic words there, so I do want to end the interview talking about the weird. I don't even know how it turned into this Twitter beef between Jet fans and the Hard Knocks thing. So I would just kind of want to dive into it here, Seth. First off, do you know, is Hard Knocks coming to the Jets? Last year they Hard Knocks announced in March that the Lions are going to be the thing, and we're recording this in June, and we still have no idea. Do you guys know, or are they coming to Jets land?
We're as in the dark about that as you guys are, to be honest with you. I think that decision goes way above me. If Hard Knocks comes, I think it'd be very exciting for everybody, including our production staff, to see the Jets on that platform. We've all been kind of wondering ourselves. I think it's kind of become this crazy story amongst Jets fans. I think the hunger to be on that show or not be on it has become, like I said, like, this is the big market, so I think there's probably more of an interest than other teams' fans. I think the Jets fans are just like, are we on it? Are we not? We got to be on it. We're kind of the same way. We have internal debates within our production team if we think it's going to be us, but obviously we're waiting to see as well, if that decision comes down.
Let me ask you, this is a question on Jet fans' minds everywhere, and I want to address with you because you would be the best person to ask on this. If Hard Knocks comes, again, we don't know, obviously, as we both said. If they come, how does that affect you guys, if at all, with all the stuff you guys are already, kicking butt and taking names with already? Would that affect you in any way, whether they are here or not?
Yeah, it's like, I couldn't say it wouldn't affect us. I think naturally you start to bring in, that amount of, a production crew from, NFL Films and HBO. It's like, obviously it's going to affect us in some way. I think, but we're still going to keep doing what we're doing, and that's telling the story of the Jets, from start to finish. I think this is going to be a historical season, and I think we're excited to tell that story. I think those are all kind of questions that we'll deal with, if that decision comes down and we are on Hard Knocks. But I think our production crew is the best in the business. I put our crew up against anybody. I could sit here and name everybody's name, that's involved in our crew, but I wouldn't want to leave anybody out. But, I can tell you that, what we do, with these productions, with the amount of staff we have, we have a crew of, 7 or 8, to put out a production like Flight 23 is honestly monumental. It's months and months of work. It's hours of work when nobody's watching. And same with One Jet Drive. It's I think if fans saw the amount of work that it takes to put out one episode during training camp, they would be floored. And I think Hard Knocks, fortunate to have probably 150, 200 people working on that show between the post production and the crew they'll have on site.
Yeah.
I think our goal is always to be compared to them. I think it's the biggest compliment we can get is to say, like, this is like a Hard Knocks level production, or this is better than Hard Knocks, or this feels like Hard Knocks. That's definitely our standard. It's something we're striving to be, and I hope fans, appreciate the work our crew is putting out, because I think not only is it, Flight 23, not only is it One Jets Drive, but it's, a lot of very unique stories about the organization and the Jets and fans, and it's a lot more than just what's happening in between the white lines, and I think that's what's cool about what we're building with 1JD Films.
I guess let me just ask you, Butley, do you want them to come? Are you guys good? You're like, hey, man, fans are debating this every day on social media as we continue to wait. Some people say, no, we have one Jets drive. We don't need Hard Knocks. Other people are like, hey, it's just more food on the table because we'll have one Jets drive and Hard Knocks. So people are going both ways. Do you want them to come?
It's like part of me, the human in me is like, I don't want to deal with it and have to like kind of navigate, trying to produce a show while they're producing a show and trying to figure out, how we're going to navigate all that. But I'm also a fan of Hard Knocks. I grew up, watching it. I think the 2010 season of Hard Knocks is maybe one of the best sports documentaries ever made. When you think of the personalities on that team, I can only imagine, of course, Hard Knocks wants the Jets. I don't know if the Jets want Hard Knocks, because why wouldn't they want Aaron Rodgers? Why wouldn't they want, the storyline, the big market, and everything that comes with it. So, I think as a fan of sports documentaries and things like that, like I would be fascinated to watch this on Hard Knocks. I know the debate goes on if it's a distraction or not, but, I think this is a professional team. I think they can handle anything. And I think it'd just be one of those things where, like, if it happens, it happens. I think everyone they'd be ready to embrace it. And I think it would be great for the fans as well.
That's my last nugget. I'm glad that you went there because that was part of the debate that some people wouldn't want Hard Knocks because they say it's too big of a distraction for the players. And I vehemently push against that. I'm not a player, of course, so I guess it's just me from my couch, the front porch. Oh, get off my lawn! But I don't think it's a distraction. I mean, like if you're in the NFL, again, I'm speaking. I'm not in the NFL, but if you're in the NFL, there's cameras everywhere. What's a few more? You're a professional anyway. Is that really a distraction? All the stuff you guys are doing are awesome, and it's part of their daily lives. Like, would Hard Knocks be as well? So, to me, I don't know if you can comment on it, but I don't feel like it's a distraction whether you're here or not here. There's going to be a lot of attention. Look at the primetime games the Jets have this year because of Aaron Rodgers. Of course there's more attention, but you just got to deal with it. If that's going to distract you, you probably didn't deserve to be a great team anyway.
Yeah, I think these guys are pros. I think, Coach Saleh he sets such a good tone with this team. I think – they're embracing the expectations, from day one. It's like it's no secret that this team is all in, going out and acquiring Aaron Rodgers. So I think, if that comes with a production like Hard Knocks, I think, the team would embrace it. I think it'd be one of those things where, like, would every single person, on the coaching staff or, the team love it? I don't know. They probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's like there's guys, for us that love, being a part of these productions more than others. It's just the nature of it. So I think, but they're pros. It's like I think to me it wouldn't be anything that would cause a distraction to the point where the team is not performing to the level they need to perform at.
Seth, you're one of the best in the friggin' business, baby. Thanks for carving out the time for Jet fans. They love to learn even more about this and see, again, the architect behind this beautiful baby you guys have been building for many years, award-winning stuff. And we really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. Thanks, Seth.
No, I appreciate it, Paul. Thanks for having me on, man.
There he is, Seth Bradley, the New York Jets director of One Jets Drive Films. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.